We appreciate you coming in on time. So, welcome to our second official session. We had the first session a few months back on cracking your CVs and getting your CVs in order. After you've gotten your CV in order, your interview is the next stage, which is why we are here. Congratulations. You've fixed your CV, you've put in the right words, you've been able to sell yourself properly on paper. Now it's time to do it face to face with a potential employer. That is why we have scheduled this session out today to talk to you and give you a brief preview of what an interview is all about. I am Ifogale Evaire. Apologies, but I can't be on my video right now because my laptop is a bit faulty. So I just discovered that this morning. So right now we've got our session planned out, a session booked. We've got these amazing presentation that we've put up, and we've got our amazing guest speaker with us today. Hauwa Yakubu will be taking us on a journey today on the sessions. So I'll just give a quick introduction about Hauwa. Please just go to the next slide. Okay, Hauwa is a award-winning product marketing manager. So she has done a lot in the marketing space. She's worked with a couple of brands and companies. There's a link to her personal website and her portfolio, which showcases all she has done and what she intends to do moving forward. And there's also a link to her amazing resume, which is very rich, if you know what I mean. So we'll just move on to the next slide quickly, please. Okay, this is a quick snapshot of Hauwa's experience, the companies she has volunteered and works at. Hauwa is also a mentor at the ADP list. I also happen to be a mentee, not a mentor there. I've got a few mentors that I speak to from time to time to get some support. So if you're currently about to navigate your career in product management or just your career in particular, you can just reach out to Hauwa through ADP, schedule a session, and you can take it on from there. So welcome everyone, welcome Hauwa, and I'll give Hauwa a chance to introduce herself properly and we can take it on from there. Thank you.
Hi everyone, and Eva, thank you for that introduction. Everyone, don't believe half of what you just heard. I'm just a normal person like you, just trying to navigate the industry as well too. My name is Hauwa. In case if you're curious, it is pronounced, well, I usually tell the non-Nigerians that it's pronounced like flower, but with a house, so Hauwa. So it's kind of like easy for you to remember. But like what Eva said, I have been around for a while. It started as a passion or a hobby or a pet project for me, but kind of grew into a career. So I kind of enjoy what I do. And that's why I mentor and I volunteer because I'm just trying to give back and see how I could help other people to make it easy. For majority of you, like me as well, too. I also came with the Japa wave, but in 2021. I've just been, would I say lucky to have, would I say, been lucky. I've just been really lucky, really, to have worked with some good brands. Since relocating to the UK, I have served as the head of PR for Kugali. Kugali is like a startup, but we've done projects with Disney. I don't know if any of you has heard about Iwaju. It came out this year as an animation. So yeah, I was among the leadership on the project. So that's really, really cool. I am currently the Chief Digital Officer at Kugali, and on the side as well too, I am the marketing manager for West London business. So yeah, that's currently what I do. I mentor, as Eva said, on ADP List and a couple of other platforms here in the UK, some places in Africa and also in Canada as well too. So that's like the brief summary of Hauwa. I hope that helps. feel free to unmute at any point to ask any question. It's just supposed to be interactive based on my personal experience. I don't claim to be an expert, but I try as much as possible to share on my journey. Hopefully, it can inspire someone. And if you need to have a one-to-one or a proper chat, I'm always happy to help. I'm just basically a chat away. So yeah, that's me.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Hauwa, for your very humble introduction. I, for one, am not one to take Hauwa's humble introductions because when you go on Hauwa's profile on her portfolio, you would understand what I mean. So we're just going to jump right into today's session. I would be taking the main bits of today's session. Basically, we're going to be gaining insight into some key aspects of interviewing through Hawa's lens, right? So we're going to be learning from her experiences and how she navigates, certain intricacies of, job interviews. I mean, rising from, the start of your career up to this point, you have, had a series of interviews every now and then, and obviously it's going to be very interesting to see how you navigated that. So we're going to be touching on the art of self introduction, the power of storytelling, confidence building techniques, and also how do we handle these tough interview questions. Sometimes some interviewers ask you some questions and you're like, if you want to give me this job, just give me already. Do you get? So that we are going to be delving into these things, right? So let's just go right at it now. Next slide. The art of self introduction. So, can we quickly just go to the chat box, and what is the first thing that comes to your mind when they tell you to introduce yourself? What's the first thing when they say introduce yourself? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Just put something in the chat box. We're trying to get an idea of what we think about self introduction at this point. So before Howard breaks it down for us, but the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about, oh, introduce yourself. Is it your name? Is it your degree? Is it your your nationality? What comes to your mind first when you're asked to introduce? This is just a 30-second task. So if we can just, jump in the chat box and then type something. Okay. Ayorinde says as an avenue to sell myself. Interesting. Okay. What else? Can we get more engagement in the chat box, please? Today is going to be a very interactive session, guys. So stay close to your keypads and your unmute button because we are going to be engaging a lot today in this session. It's not the typical come and listen and go session. All right. So John says his name. Okay, interesting. Can we get two more responses? Okay, John again says qualification. Okay, what comes to your mind when you are told to introduce yourself? Richard says a way to say, Richard, my name and the value I can offer. Okay, Stephanie, a way to say how I fit the role. Bibs, that's Bibi, and I know Bibs. I'm going to say my name and career history from past, present, future. Chinyere says it's time to tell them what I bring to the table. Interesting. I like that one. What I bring to the table. Right. Okay. Now, however, for the first question into this session is what make an interesting self-introduction? Interesting. I use the word interesting. I know on our slide we have compelling, but then what makes an interesting yet compelling self-introduction?
That's a good question. And I've just been reading the chat. I think it's a combination of everything that everybody has posted here, to be fair.
Yeah.
So, and a self introduction is basically, you know how people say first impression lasts the longest.
Yeah.
From what I have seen, if you, I mean, you guys would have heard me at the beginning. I usually try to start with an icebreaker. So tell like a quirky joke or just something to make the interviewer at ease because you might feel that you are the tensed person, but as someone that has sat on the other side of the desk as well to interviewing people, I can tell you for certain that the interviewer too is tense as well and is just hoping that the interview goes well. So it's
That's
always
true.
good to start with an icebreaker to kind of like relax the situation. It also helps you. It's kind of like a way of telling your brain to relax. You've got this. Because the moment you just go straight and you're like, this is what I bring to the table, hire me, please. You'll be so nervous and you don't even realize when your hands will be shaking. So you don't want that. So even if you want to start with your name, which I'd advise to start with, because a lot of them cannot pronounce our names. So sometimes it's easy. So the same way I say, oh, my name is pronounced like flower, but with a how, instead of saying the traditional Hauwa, because you guys will just spend 5 minutes trying to get the pronunciation right, and we don't have that time, because because for every interviewer there are probably 10 other people that they want to speak to after you, but you just want to make the most lasting impression. So starting with the icebreaker, a quick summary of what you do, so professionally, not telling them, oh, I come from a family of 5, my daddy used to be a shoemaker, my mommy was a dancer. They don't want that. It's just go straight to the point. So your name, a brief summary of your history. So they have your CV as well too. You don't want to start reciting everything on your CV. You just want like a summarized version of it, but from the human aspect. If they want to read more, your CV is available for them to read. I'd advise having a portfolio as well too, so they can delve deeper. But just a summarized version of yourself. So something like, oh, hi, my name is Caleb. I am an engineer. I have a couple of awards because of what I've done. I have worked with XYZ companies. I'd always advise to start with the household name. So if you've been opportune to work with very renowned organizations, start with that, because it already gives, how people used to say perception is key. Perception
Mm-hmm.
is key. The moment you can tell somebody, oh, I've worked with Google, Snapchat, and Disney, they're like, oh my God, please tell me more. Then when you start saying, I worked with Okpavwe, nursery and primary school, nobody has that time. So I just say as much as you can, get the most important things out in 30 seconds and just be rounding up for the other 30 seconds as well too. So just, you can rehearse it with yourself, you can rehearse it with your colleagues. It just depends on what the job role is and what you think they'll be trying to find out about you. So I'd advise to read the JD, which is the job description. It kind of gives you an understanding towards the character that they intend to hire. So it kind of gives you like how you need to phrase that conversation, because in some job description they will tell you, oh, we need a people's person, we need someone who's social, we need someone who can actually give. Sorry, Eva.
Apologies, just
No,
continue, please.
yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Sorry, I thought you were asking a question. So they would actually give you like pointers. There are always hidden facts on what they intend to see. So just summarize that into a minute or 90 seconds and then be done. If they have other questions, they would ask you. So just make it as brief as possible, is what I'd say when you're trying to tell them about yourself.
Howard, thank you so much for that response. I think one very interesting thing I have picked up from your response was the fact that you have to just, be very intentional and rehearse what you need to say.
Yes.
Excuse me, because more often than not, on any interview you go, they will always ask you to tell me about yourself or introduce yourself.
Yes.
So having a go-to response is a very good practice. Like how I has said, you cannot, a time will come where you cannot wing it, because you start clashing your experiences. Imagine if you have diverse experiences and you're thinking, oh, I want to introduce myself, and then you start introducing yourself as a project manager, and probably you were in advertising or you were applying for like product management. You see there's like that gap. So always make sure to you know rehearse and practice your responses to very common questions like this. Then I think another thing I'm just going to bring up here is our wordings matter. Like how I said, key names, big names. Now imagine someone, I was listening to a short clip on Instagram, and the person was going on about how do you introduce yourself, right? Imagine I come and I tell you, oh, I have 5 years of experience, or I come and I say I have half a decade of experience. You just see how the wordings gives more finesse to what you have to say. So that's great. So Howard, thank you so very much for the response. We'll just move on to the next slide. And it's very interesting because the answer you gave to this question just ties in perfectly with what we want to talk about in the next slide. So Howard, the question in this slide is this. Now we've had a lot of people say when you are on interviews, right? Give the answers to your question using the star response, the situation, the task, the action, and the results, right? But then how can we you know stand out from that crowd, because obviously we're not the only person that are being interviewed for that particular role, right? Using the act of storytelling. If you look at the bottom right hand corner of the presentation, we can see a feedback from one of the top guys who made a post on LinkedIn saying he had interviewed a lot of guys and all of them actually responded with the star responses. So imagine interviewing like 100 persons, everybody's using the star responses. But one thing he mentioned was that the people that stood out was the people that could tell a story within that star response. So can you just break this down for us? How can we approach using the star method via storytelling?
I think that's a great question, Caleb. I think one of the most important things is bring in your personality on board. I get how that sounds and how that could be a bit contradictory, especially if you're thinking, oh my God, trust me, they don't want to see my personality, else they will not hire me. The truth of the matter is that the person you're speaking to is also a human being, and more likely than not, the person has been exactly where you are at that point of interviewing. So you need to tell a story. The power of storytelling can never be underestimated. Storytelling is the reason why a lot of us go on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter, because we want to see what's trending. We want to see what people are fighting about online, or we just want to see what is going on Instablog. That's the power of storytelling, the way and manner people are able to sell themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in marketing that we always say, it's called emotion sells. So no
Yep.
matter the emotion that you're trying to sell, are you trying to sell so because there are different emotions, right? And it just depends on what and how you intend to fit into that job role and what aspect you're coming from. So are you applying for a leadership position? Are you applying for an entry position? So it then depends on what type of emotion you want to play into as well too. And an advice that before an interview, you should research. So you could do a little research on your interviewer as well too. What are the things that are of sentiments to the person? So you can channel your storytelling towards that emotion and use that to drive what you're trying to do, which is selling yourself ultimately. So what I usually do before every interview, all you just need to do is check on LinkedIn. You can find the person.
Yeah.
You can even go on Google and search the person's name and their company, and it will pop out. You could see other things, their affiliations, their private Twitter account as well too. You need to do your research before a job interview, because you don't want to go there and in the process of telling a story, or you thinking that you're trying to come up with a compelling story, you go and trigger some emotions. You don't want that. So you need to do your research beforehand so that you can know how to play to it. So if I know that my interviewer is a person that is big on football or soccer, I don't know the first thing about football. But when I know that I want to give a story or I'm trying to sell myself, because that's ultimately what an interview is. You trying to sell yourself to the other person and you trying to stand out from the other person or the other people that will come after you. So like the person here, Brendan, talked about, it could be like a combination of everything: emotion, suspense, horror. But please don't bring the horror. But when it's time to use the STAR method, and say, for example, like the first question Caleb had asked me, which is tell me about yourself. And if the person is trying to go like delve deeper from me just doing like the basic introduction, and the person is like, oh, have you ever been in situations where you had a fallout with a colleague, or have you ever had any tough personal experience at work, and how did you navigate it? It's very important to approach every conversation from the STAR method, because here in the UK, a lot of the job roles that you'll be applying for, they want to see you actually answer using the STAR method, and that's storytelling. So the S, which is the situation. So you could say, maybe, for example, right? I'm just off the top of my head. How did you deal with a maybe like a tough situation at work? So storytelling, you're coming from, oh, there was a time at work. And yeah, before I forget, for every aspect of the S, the T, the A, the R, please try and summarize it to at least 2 sentences. You don't want to spend too much time on either of those, because that would just drag it on for too long. And the person that you're trying to talk to would probably forget what the story was about at the first place. So you don't want any of that. So start with the situation, probably summarize it into 2 sentences. Oh, I was at work, we're trying to promote a newsletter, and we had a situation where my boss asked me to, but it couldn't be done. you're done with S. You go to the T, which is the task at hand, and then you say, oh, so how I was able to do it was I came up with an idea using XYZ. Again, this could be a way to sell your experience. So things around the softwares you've used, if you use softwares at work, the strategies you employed, if you use strategy to get it done, or the analytical way that you could use as well to get it done. So you tie that into the T on how you're able to get the task. Then the action as well too, which is I'd always advise for the action part as well to try and tie in everything into 2 sentences. But if you can reference to numbers or percentages, it kind of helps to give like a visual representation, like what Caleb talked about earlier, where he said the difference between, oh, I have 5 years experience or I have half a decade of experience. You can see the both of them. It's the same thing you're saying, but it just depends on how you're communicating it. So use that as well too. So you could say maybe in the company's history of 25 years, it had never been done before. I achieved 500% increment. That 500% increment may just be 5 followers because when they opened their social media, there was 0. And at this point, they have 5 followers. So it is 500. Jonathan, like it could be anything ridiculous, but just know how to package yourself, because ultimately it's how to package yourself. And then you can now talk about the results. Yes, you could think that it could be the previous ones that you've talked about, but it's actually the results, because they actually want to see how all of that tied into the final aspect of it. So are you just saying after all of that long story, it didn't result to anything? Or how would you bring that experience to our own job? Or how would you bring that experience to the team that you intend to manage? So it's about bringing all of this together, but tell a compelling story, but try and make it as quick and as succinct as possible. Else you just lose them while trying to use the STAR method. I think even on the gov.uk website, it's even stated there that for any question that you see, they usually implement the STAR method. That's to show you how important it is in the UK. Plus, even during my previous interviews as well too, it's the same thing. Even when I'm interviewing someone as well too, it's the same thing that I like to see. Tell me what happened, how you handled it, the actions you implemented, and the eventuality of the results. So that's literally the summary of what I'll say. And for the storytelling, I think the angle I could come from with that one is to tell you that nobody can tell your story better than you can. Nobody will hide you better than you can. Nobody will blow your trumpet better than you can. That you have 1 minute to blow your trumpet, I'd say do it well. And that's how I'm going to just like end that aspect of it. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Howard, for that response. Funny how, we're coming back to being able to sell yourself in the shortest possible time when we get to like subsequent slides. So we'll just keep going. I can see some questions are coming in already. We'll definitely come to that, right? So Eva, do you want to say something?
Yes, I was just about to speak on the questions where you've touched that already.
Yes, right.
We'll handle the questions
Handle all the
towards the
questions
end
at
of
the
the
end.
session.
Yeah,
Thank you.
right. Thank you,
Just
guys.
keep the
Just
questions
yeah,
coming,
keep it
please.
coming. Yeah. Right. Okay. Now we're just going to run through this. Confidence building tips. This is one thing that I cannot say enough. I remember what I was going to touch on in your last presentation, right? The importance of researching your interviewers. Now, when you were talking, I just remembered while I was having my interview, I had to research my current line manager, right? And I saw he had over 15 years of experience using something we call the CDM regulations. So every time I was on the interview, I was very careful not to dabble too much into that bit because I knew that that was his core, area of expertise. And then eventually, when I saw that I did not have any choice but to talk about it, I was like, it would interest you to know that while I have a lot of theoretical knowledge on this subject, I don't have any practical application. So it just resonated with me that, imagine not doing that research and then just going into that place and then wanting to sort of throw somebody off that have over 15 years experience in one particular regulation. So do your research, guys. Do your research
Exactly. And
for that.
I
Right.
think sometimes it's okay to just admit that you don't know it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, because
Like, yeah.
when you're interviewing like a lot of people, they all come in there saying, yes, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that. I can change your company overnight. But I I realized that with me, anytime the people that resonate the longest or the people that I remember long after are the ones that are okay to admit that they don't know, but they want to learn. So
Very
I'm not
important. Yeah.
saying I'm not saying go into an interview and say, sir, please help. I don't know anything. Teach me. No. But like Caleb, it's okay to admit when you don't know. So you could just say, oh, I know this aspect, but I'll be willing to improve on this aspect. I think through XYZ, I could actually improve on XYZ aspect as well too. Do you understand? So admitting you don't know is just a very human flaw, and which is very acceptable in an interview. You don't have to pretend you know it all. Nobody does. I
Yeah.
don't.
I
Yeah.
think the most important factor there is being able to show you have the ability to learn and learn fast.
Yeah.
Very important. So, moving on, confidence building techniques. One very quick question. How do we present ourselves as a brand? Because of late, recently, I just learned the importance of personal branding. This is just like in the last 2, 3 months. So, how can we effectively present ourselves and sell ourselves as a brand?
That's a brilliant question, Caleb. See, at the end of the day, the first brand is yourself. Nobody, like I said earlier, nobody can sell you better than you can sell yourself. Nobody can hype you better than you can hype yourself. First thing you need to do, I know it looks insignificant, but you need to get your LinkedIn in check. My for one of my current jobs, it was actually when I got in that I actually realized that they had produced an Excel sheet for all the candidates, and one of the key aspects was LinkedIn, where they wanted to actually. So they were like checkpoints in all of the LinkedIn, and they were like, "Oh, this person doesn't have a lot of engagement on LinkedIn. This LinkedIn is non-effective. This is that." And for the candidate that scored the highest, which was me, they actually put it there. They were like, "Oh, has a very good interaction on LinkedIn, has won a couple of awards." Do you understand? So you might be looking at LinkedIn as nothing, but it is something. It is everything.
Right. So I
Yeah,
should start. I should start chatting on LinkedIn then.
you should. So you see all those unnecessary things like liking somebody's post or even just
Hmm.
dropping compliments and saying, "Oh, congratulations." Actually creating engagement around it. I don't know if any of you have heard about Global Talent Visa. But
Yeah.
even with Global Talent Visa too, it's actually a thing where the assessors will actually go to your LinkedIn or to whoever you're referencing as maybe a senior or somebody. They actually go to check LinkedIn. So in the UK here, LinkedIn is the first resource in terms of getting everything sorted. So I'd advise that in the step of towards building your branding, LinkedIn is the first. Second thing I would say is to have a portfolio. If you can, do it. So if you are in any designing, engineering, marketing, customer care, anything at all. So any past project you've worked on, I mean, with the exception of whether or not there are NDAs restricting you from actually putting them out. But as much as you can, tell your story, how you played into the role, what you contributed to the team, how it turned out to be a success. So basically using the STAR method to summarize yourself on your portfolio. Once that is done as well, too, you can then go around. I would say, as an international student, when I newly came, one of the things that I noticed that really helped me here was actually networking. People might
Hmm.
see it as nothing, they might see it as it's a waste of time. I'd rather go and pick shift than to be going somewhere and be saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" But the truth of the matter is, you need to network. That's the first step towards the third step towards building your brand. You need to go. So there are some platforms that are free for you to actually check your industry event happening around you. A
Yeah.
couple of the times, a lot of those events are free and they're even looking for people to attend. So you get to interact with keynote speakers, you get to interact with people on whatever level you are in terms of your job search. You tend to interact with even recruiters within the industry. So it helps. A couple of my jobs that I've gotten is through networking. I will not lie, it helps. Another aspect again is volunteering. I know volunteering, some people could say, there are only so much hours in a day. I have to use it towards getting money. In the UK here, for you to get a job, you need to give back. Without giving back, I'm sorry to say, it just puts you in a very compromising situation. We already have a lot of stereotypes around us. And in order for you to set yourself apart, I'd say it's good for you to volunteer. And once you're doing these things as well, too, you also need to tell your own story, which takes us back to storytelling. So little things like taking pictures at those events, or little things about showing your milestone in terms of your volunteering on your LinkedIn and on your portfolio. So you have a 360 story that you're telling about yourself. And another thing I would advise again is having an online presence. And I don't mean social media, I don't mean just the usual. I'm saying when they Google your name, what pops up? When they Google a Hauwa Yakubu, what will pop up? Or when they Google a Caleb, what will pop up? These are the important questions as well too you need to tell. So even if it means contributing to a third party resource, so something like just writing a short story, or like a lot of you would have noticed LinkedIn keeps on popping up some questions and they're like, oh, as an expert in the area, would you like to contribute to XYZ? Do it. You don't even have to say so much, but just do it. Because for every contribution, for every time you put something against your name on the internet, it actually helps to increase your personal branding and your self-ranking. And the moment somebody can Google you and a couple of things come out about you, it shows that you can be trustworthy and you actually exist. So being Nigerian, there are a lot of stereotypes where they're like, Nigeria is either you're a scammer, you're this, you're that. There are a lot of negative stereotypes. So the moment you're able to paint yourself in the light, in a positive light, that helps your branding. Another thing I'll say is having an actual strategy towards it, because you can't be everywhere to everyone at the same time. It just cannot work. So you need to pick within your industry what works best, where so for example, right, who are the leaders within your industry? So the keynote voices, the people that people actually respect, where are they? So are they having one-to-one in-person conversations, or are they virtual online having lives? So is it Twitter live, Facebook live, or are they on LinkedIn networking with people? Once you're able to answer that question, then it then takes you towards your strategy. Strategy has to be something that you can actually actualize and implement over the couple of months or years. It's always a work in the process, but you need to get it done. So having that strategy towards it helps. For some people, it could even be YouTube tutorials. A lot of tech people have taken to YouTube, where you're vlogging about how to navigate a tech problem, or you're talking about how to help people, or you're talking about how to even get a job within the tech space. So that helps as well too, because YouTube serves as an independent self engine as well too. So anytime people search for you on Google, it will bring out your YouTube page as well too. So that's part of it as well too. And things like, what are you most proud of as an individual, which goes back to nobody can tell your story better than you can. So even if it is in your team and you are participating in a project and they don't even give you credit for it as an organization, it doesn't mean that you wouldn't still go ahead and still portray yourself in a positive light in terms of your contribution online. So it could even come from the angle of, say, I've just done something incredible in my company, but my boss decides to take all the credit for it. It's totally fine. You can still go on LinkedIn and say, oh, it was great working with, tag your boss. It was great working with at Caleb on this project. He brought a lot of innovation and a lot of leadership to the team. And I was very, very grateful for that opportunity to learn with him. What you've just done is you've used one stone to kill two birds. One, you've made your boss happy, meaning in the process, probably sometime in the future, he'll be happy to give you credit for it, because he thinks you'd also go back as well to try and promote him on your LinkedIn, which, to be fair, you wouldn't do that again, but it's just the way, right? The second aspect that you've done is you've also let other people know, so potential recruiters, potential partners, potential collaborators know that you have an experience on that. And even if they need further help with that in the future, they could reach out to you. So all of these come together to form your personal branding. Some people take the extra step by actually going to maybe create a logo or do anything for themselves. There's a mentee I have who is Ukrainian. His name is Roman. As everybody's aware, with the whole conflict going on in Ukraine. So he is a tech gamer and he was trying to build his personal brand so that he could use that to kind of reach out to other tech people behind the wall lines and can't leave Ukraine for now. So what he did, that's why I mentioned the YouTube video, was he actually started vlogging in their language for them to actually reach out to resources to other people online through YouTube. Currently, Roman, because I started mentoring him in 2022. And currently, Roman's YouTube channel has grown. It's even more than mine right now. His online presence is insane. He's been able to grow a followership, and what he's been able to do as well too is been able to create like a community, because community cells like what Caleb and Eva are doing right now, where they are creating like a community for us. Yeah, things like that help in terms of building your brand. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on, but
No, it's all right.
it's just to emphasize the importance of a personal brand. Yeah, it's very important, guys. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Right. Very, very, very insightful contributions. And it's interesting how at every point, everything you see is just tied together in the whole 360 branding thingy. Because at the end of the day, when you have taken all these steps to build your brand, then you have stuff to engage on LinkedIn, you have stuff to engage on YouTube,
Right.
and then you just put yourself out there. It's so, so, so very, 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 very beautiful response. Now, quick one, what are some confidence building techniques that we can adopt? What has worked for you in the past, and what do you think are some key steps just to
Mm-hmm.
help build confidence amongst before interview, basically?
Mm. I'd say the first thing you can do, I know it sounds very feeble, but the first thing is to be kind to yourself.
Mm,
That's the first thing. A lot of the time, imposter syndrome plays a large role in our head where you're like, well, I'm not good enough for this job. Why should they hire me? Why am I wasting my time? Guy, I already know sales at the good place. They're giving the job to somebody else. All those things, there are always voices. Sorry, Caleb, you have a question.
not a question. You just said something, and I just wanted to highlight something with that imposter syndrome. I was doing a CV for someone up in England 2 days ago, and she sent me her details. She's currently on the verge of finishing her PhD. And then when I sent back the cover letter and everything to her, she was like, is this really mine? I'm like, well, you did everything there. It obviously is yours. So like it's very important. Yeah, just sorry for interrupting you.
No, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. A lot of us tend to go through that. I see. Imposter syndrome is like that companion you cannot easily just let go of. But you have to have a way to dissociate from it. So it's kind of like what I tell my mentees as well too, because imposter syndrome plays a key role into our confidence building. So
Mhm.
because of that voice, especially because you can hear it in your own voice in your head, and you think you are the one telling yourself that, but the truth of the matter is that's not it. It's just the fear of the unknown, which could make you think that you're not good enough. But I can assure you, if you could see yourself through the lens of somebody else, you're way better than you think you are. So I'll just say be kind to yourself. So it could even be little affirmations like looking into the mirror. There's this thing I used to do. If my sister is on the call, she'll probably know what I'm talking about. Where I'm just passing through a mirror, like you're just going on your own and you just stop and you're like, baby girl, look at you. Something as crazy as that, it helps a lot in confidence building. You might not even realize, you might think, oh, this is just vain, but it's not. Sometimes you need to hear yourself say those words to yourself. So even if in your head you're hearing something else, the moment you're blotting something else out to yourself, it actually helps a lot more than you think. Another thing as well to with confidence building, something you challenge yourself. So things that say for example you wouldn't see yourself doing that you think, oh, I don't even know how I can start with this. So let me give you a personal story. One of the reasons why I do so much in my career that you see my CV and I've worked with a lot of brands is because I have this policy in my head where I never say no. Now
Mm,
it's not negative lens, it's the positive lens. So my boss could literally just pass in and say, we need somebody that can help us to do this. Do we outsource it to somebody? Howard, do you have any idea? Yes, I do. This is Howard that has never heard of that thing in her life. Howard does not know how to start with it. Howard doesn't even know anything about it. But the act of never saying no and actually always challenging yourself to do better. So, on learning everything you think you've learned before and actually challenging yourself to learn something new. After saying that, yes, I can assure you for the next 2 nights, I'm not sleeping. I'm in front of YouTube learning how can I do this one? How can I do that one? And the next day you come and then you've improved. So when I was just starting my career, there was a time that we were trying to create the Christmas spirit at the job that I was then. And I didn't know how to use WordPress website then. Mind you, this was like NYSC. I had just finished from uni and I decided to make it snow on the website. So I went through, I don't know if anybody knows how to use WordPress. You know the plugins, right? I went and I installed a plugin that was making it snow on the website. And come January, and how I had no idea how to deactivate the plugin. So all through January, it was still snowing on the website, and my boss kept on asking, "How? What did you do? What like?" But with that experience, I look back now and I laugh at it. But at that point, it was not funny. But it was a learning process. It was a learning point. And at the end of the day, after watching, I think like a million YouTube video, it was an Indian guy that helped. The Indian guy was like, how to deactivate? And that was what helped me and what saved my job. Else it would have been very, very catastrophic. But eventually that whole process just taught me that last, everything will be all right. Like no matter what, there's nothing that there's no solution to. It might just take longer, but eventually there's a solution to it. So be kind to yourself. Always give yourself self-affirmations in front of the mirror. And even if you fail, it's okay to cry and panic at that point. But when you're done, clean your eye, sit down in front of laptop. Anything that you want to find, there's a solution to everything on the internet. Even if you want to find how to do this one, Google it. I can assure you somebody somewhere has done a YouTube video about it or a tutorial on how to navigate it. So that helps as well to be confidence building. Another thing that I'll say is to challenge yourself career-wise, 2 things you've never done before. That could really, really be a confidence booster as well. And the last thing on that would be networking. Again, I keep emphasizing on it because it's important. So you'd see some places where you can actually apply as a speaker for maybe an event, or you are just applying as a participant for an event. Do that. It helps with your confidence, because the more you do things over and over again, the more it actually helps to make you an expert in it. So even there's no overnight trick to it, there's no overnight success to it. Imposter syndrome would always be there, but like what I usually tell people when I have conversations around imposter syndrome, I'd say, give that voice in your head a name. My own is called Pam. Anytime I start hearing nonsense in my head, I know it's Pam that is moving mad. So once you start hearing that voice in your head, just tell yourself, see, that's Pam saying this thing to me, or Caleb, you could give your own like a different, maybe guy man or something. And once that voice starts, once that voice starts in your head, just learn how to dissociate and say, this is not how I'm talking. This is Pam talking. And Pam is not going to bring me down. Pam is not going to make me lose that job. I'm just as efficient. I am just as brilliant. I'm just as smart. I deserve this job. Nobody's going to stand in my way. And I'm going to get that job. See, I can tell you for a fact that the moment you step into that interview, after telling yourself that thing, this is how you be carrying your shoulder. Interviewer will be telling you, drop your shoulder down a ball. It's about confidence boosting, and just do that to yourself. Be kind to yourself. I think that's why I'll stop there. Francis, sorry, I think you have a question. Your hands are raised.
Hello, not a question. First of all, I need to thank you for you have a vast experience in this, in like interviews and other things, and I must say that I'm learning a lot from you. But at the same time, I also want to point out that we need to also know when, yes, you should always have the mentality of never say no, and ready to accept any task or job that has been given to you at any time.
Yeah.
But we should also at the same time have a limit to doing this, because if you keep having the mentality of always wanting to say no, a person pleaser, people would end up
riding over you,
using you and stepping on you at every chance they get. So
that's a good.
I think like what Hauwa said, it's very important to draw the line. Like she said, in the positive light, in the positive light. I think an example I can use of that is I used to do a lot of data analysis for project and thesis. And prior to now, I used to outsource the quantitative bits. I did not like to do it. And then I had an issue with one of the works. And then I told myself, you know what, I'm just going to do this. And how hard can it be? I mean, it was a lot of YouTube videos. But then right now, me and Excel, we are besties and we are pushing it. So obviously, we've spent a lot of time on this slide. So we'll just crack on so that we can get value from what I think we have 2 slides left. Now, quickly, how can we handle tough interview questions? I know you've touched on this already, but then my question to you is, what is the toughest interview question you've been asked, and how did you navigate this?
That's actually a very tough question. See, so off the top of my head, I can't really remember any now, but I know for a fact that I've been asked very ridiculous things during interview. And like, I can't remember who said it. I think it was Eva or you, that you're like, see, if you want to give me the job, just give me the job. Like, there's no point of putting me through this. Do you understand? Like, it doesn't even make any sense at all. So, but I think the best way to navigate any hard or tough question, even prior to an interview, is to do your research around it. So to ask yourself what are the frequently asked questions during that interview, or to even see how best you can kind of preempt the questions that will be asked. One of the ways you can preempt it is by going through the JD, which is the job description, like I talked about earlier. But the truth of the matter is, the JD can only tell you so much. Some recruiters, their head is somewhere else. They don't even know what they're doing, and they will throw you very tough questions. I think what I like to view the glass as half full instead of half empty. So I'd say instead of looking at it as what are the tough questions and how to answer them, is you saying, how best can I sell myself in the most positive light based on their own aspect or their own perspective. So if somebody's asking you questions like what you have on the slide, like why should we hire you? Yes, I'd say kind of like with the whole STAR method that you talked about, that really helps with behavioral questions and experiences. Like during interviews where they ask you things like that, like why should we hire you, it's always very, very good to come from the perspective of being human first. So so what I mean by being human first is actually coming from the angle of bringing your experience on board, storytelling based on your practicality of what you've done, the analytical part. So always putting like a number or percentage to it, it kind of helps. But for the ones that are out of the norm, and the questions that are just from the bottom of God knows where, I'd say once they get thrown at you, the first thing is to take a step back. You don't need to jump at every question. You could just ask them, please, could you rephrase it? Right? That could be the first way to handle tough questions, because as someone who has been on the other side of the table, sometimes you don't even, because they could be nervous, so they could come up with a question in a way that they don't intend for it to sound that way. So by asking them, sorry, what do you mean by that? Or by asking them to rephrase it or putting it in, because you can also ask them questions. An interview is a two-way street. It's not just them interviewing you for the job. It's you actually interviewing them to see whether or not they actually merit your time for you to actually spend the next 1 or 2 years at the organization. So ask them to rephrase the question or ask them, what do they mean by that? And once they are able to give you like a place that you're comfortable, because another reason why I tend to ask that question if anybody throws a tough question, because I think the last interview that I went for, they actually had like 4 different foolscap sheets. Like they had printed out questions. See, I'm not even joking. They had printed out questions to ask me. This job was at, what's the name of this place? It's close to London, but it's not London. They printed out 4 foolscap sheets, right, with so many questions, and there were 4 interviewers. And when I was done with that level of interview, they made the team members to interview me as well too. See, what I would say with such jobs, it's never that serious and it's never that hard. Any job that is always going through most of that, I don't know if any of you has had this experience where you go for a job interview and then they tell you to do X, Y, Z, impossible things. But at the end of the day, after you bring all that strategy on board, you find out that they are going ahead to implement it. And even if they don't call you back or if they offer the job to somebody else, it's just like a way of resource finding where they use you to bring ideas to their company and they never had the intention of hiring you in the first place. Caleb, have you ever experienced that before?
Well, not technically. I wouldn't know, to be fair.
I feel like if you have, feel free to drop it in the chat. It happens a lot, especially with people in marketing when they tell you to do slides. But what I would say, what I would say is bring your personality on board, be human first, answer the question from the aspect of, again, the iceberg. Oh, Stephanie has been through that. It happens a lot, even in Nigerian jobs as well. So they'll tell you to do X, Y, Z, and at the end of the day, you see your strategies being implemented online, and you are shocked because you're like, oh, not be my strategy with this, but you can't sue the company because it was an interview and it's a gentleman's agreement. But like I was saying, one is you can start with by asking them to rephrase. Another thing that you can do is perhaps just take a few seconds to give yourself, like, catch your breath. I don't know if there's any question in particular. Maybe somebody can throw me a question and then I could try and answer so we can have like a situational kind of thing. Does anybody have any questions? So I could actually use that to answer.
Right. It's supposedly difficult question, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I can think of one off the top of my head. How have you had to handle your superior taking credit for something you did and not giving you any sort of credit on the job?
Oh, that's a good question. So you always start by answering and saying that's a good question, even if in your head is something else. So you say, oh, that's a good question, right? So one thing that I'd say, a key thing to always remember is never badmouth your previous employer. So off what Caleb has said, now I could go off with the option of saying, oh, that man, he didn't have any sense. He always used to take credit for everything. Don't ever do that in an interview, because it gives the impression to your interviewer that that's the same thing you'll be doing when you leave the organization. And you don't want to come off as a toxic person that cannot be hired. So now, time to answer your question. Oh, that's a very good question, Mr. Ivan. Sorry, question.
Sorry, just continue. I'll ask the next question. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a very good question, Caleb. In my previous organization, I actually had a boss that we collaborated very well with on different projects. A lot of the time, he took leadership for it, and he really helped me to build on my experience as a junior engineer in the company. For times where, on the managerial level, right? Because he had access to the C-suite executives, and he always used that to portray the job on what we're doing as a team. I wouldn't say he actually took, again, this is me trying to bring it back. Listen to what I'm doing. So I wouldn't say he actually took credit a lot of the time for the job, or I wouldn't say he actually took credit for it. I'd say that he actually helped to portray what we're doing from a managerial level, which I also use that as a way to learn from him as well too. That I didn't have access to the management doesn't mean that it wasn't well portrayed. A lot of the time I got promoted for my contributions to the team, which serves as a recognition for my contribution. And if at all I didn't get like direct accolades or applause on it, I still appreciated that it was a process and a journey in which I used to improve myself and get to where I am right now. Now, notice what I just did. I didn't badmouth my boss. I did not come from the angle of where, because they were trying to get you to speak negatively on your previous employer. So I didn't do that as well, too. I also turned the question to make myself look better.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand? So exemplifying my qualities of being a team player, exemplifying my qualities of remember, so I shed light on the fact that I actually got promoted on the job. I actually shed light as well so that I got recognized for my parts that I played in the role as well too. And I actually shed light on the fact that, yes, it is to be expected in a company where the manager actually takes credit for the job. Everybody knows it's normal. Do you understand? So it's knowing how to intelligently bring that question to exemplify your personal attributes is what I would say. So that's how to handle it. Eva, do you have another question around for me to answer?
Yes, I just put it on the chat box. It's about how do you facilitate the success of your team?
Now that is a good question. Okay, so how do I do that based on my personal experiences by learning? So employing the use of learning platforms like LinkedIn Learnings, or actually even one-on-one learnings as well too. As a junior engineer, sorry, I keep using junior engineer because I think there are a lot of engineers here on the call. As a junior engineer, I have XYZ years of experience in doing this. So I use that as well to train my team, having one-to-one sessions with them and having follow-up sessions just to try and pick up on their strengths on the team, because I understand that everybody has to play to their strengths. And by using that too, as a leader as well, I also take management courses on engineering to help me improve, because nobody can be an island. And even if I expect the team to bring something on board, I also bring something on board as well too. Just like how I'm hoping to bring my years of experience and knowledge on board to your organization when hired. Thank you. So notice, I still brought it back to praise myself. Again, that is an interview. You need to sell yourself like we talked about. So I still brought it back to sell myself. I brought it back to the fact that I'm a team player. I brought it to the fact that my team is incredible as well too, where I talked about their strengths, but I was intentional not to mention their weakness. So, and also talking about the fact that there's a strategy where you play to their strengths, which at the end of the day, without you saying that as well too, everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses, but working together as a team actually helps the team to grow. So it's like always turning the tough questions as a way to bring your experience and your knowledge and your expertise on board, and why you'll be the great hire or the great choice for them to hire eventually. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so very much, Howard. There are loads of questions coming through the chat box for this particular slide. However, we'll touch on the ones we can touch on after this session, because we did not start in time, and we promised Hauwa we're just going to take an hour of our time because she's a busy woman. So we're just going to crack right on. The one thing I would say concerning this last question that we just asked how to handle difficult questions, and she already touched on it, was to understand the approach to the questions. Are you taking a personality based, a competency based, a previous experience based, or a situational based response to the questions? This just help you clarify, what aspect of your experience you want to use to answer the question, and it all depends on the question you are asked, right? So quickly we'll just go to the next slide, and this next slide was something we touched about earlier: selling yourself. Now, what is an elevator pitch, and how can we make an impactful elevator pitch the answer to us, please?
Is it? I don't have all the answers, but basically,
No worries, just go for it, just go for it.
so to break an elevator pitch down to the most rudimentary idea of what it means, the time it takes you when you enter inside the elevator and you pick a floor, that time it takes you to get to your floor. Just imagine that you have Aliko Dangote inside that elevator, and you're trying to sell Aliko Dangote to actually invest in a project or an idea that you're actually doing. That's what you need to do. So that's what you should have at the back of your head. So how can I sell this man in a minute or less to actually invest $10 million in my project? That is literally an elevator pitch. So have it at the back of your mind. The same thing to it, an interview or an interviewer. How can I sell this, or how can I sell Hauwa to this interviewer in a minute or less that they would hire me? So you need to ask yourself, which is, I think it was the first question Caleb asked, on what do you start with when you say introduce yourself, right? Do you want to start with your name? Do you want to start with this? But from this elevator speech, you need to come from the angle of, what exactly am I trying to sell? You shouldn't, you have less than a minute. You can't sell the world to one person. You can't be everything to everybody at the same time, right? So I think for this elevator pitch, what you need to do is, you first of all even need to know what you want to pitch. So you need to sit down and have the conversation with yourself first, and which is what we talked about earlier, of knowing and doing your research. So doing your research about the interviewer, the job, yourself as well too, Googling yourself and seeing what comes up, and then seeing how you can play to your strengths as well too. So I'd say one of the key things is for you to even do a SWOT analysis on yourself. So as a personal assessment to people, right? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my current opportunities, and what are my threats? Once you do that, it kind of tells a story of who is Hauwa and how can I sell myself in an elevator speech, being in 1 minute or at most 90 seconds to the person. So give me an example, Caleb, on how to sell myself. Ask me.
No, I mean, just in 1 minute or less, just give us your, if, say for example, you were in, you got 2 minutes, right, with the CEO of MGM, right? Now, sell to them why you should be their next head of creativity or their next marketing manager in like 2 minutes. So let's go for the digital marketing manager, since it's MGM. Everybody knows MGM. They do all the good movies and whatnot. So let's go for the digital marketing
I
manager.
feel like they're almost dead.
Okay, would you prefer 21st Century Fox?
Okay, so let's do that, right? Or let's even
bring them alive, bring them back.
Okay, so let's say it's Caleb, right? Caleb is the guy with the big box. Oh, hi, Caleb. My name is Hauwa. I am a multi-award winning digital marketer, and I feel I could actually help MGM. Growing up with MGM, I actually used to be in love with a lot of your movies, but of recent, I've noticed that the likes of Disney are beginning to compete with a lot. I have a pitch that I think would actually help to set you aside and bring you back into where you need to be and where you deserve to be. Like I said, I've been with MGM all of my life, so I feel that by implementing this, but again, I don't have the thing yet, right? But I feel like with everything that I've been able to do with my years of experience, I've worked with brands like Disney, I've worked with Snapchat, I've worked with Google. Then I need to bring all these ideologies to you. I've been able to mentor people across 14 countries, so I am multi-diverse, multi-industry experience, and I have a lot of degrees behind me as well, to which I could bring on board to help MGM. I really think that, because this is me, I would have done a research on him, right? So say, for example, if the man likes football, I could end it with, oh, I really think that this could be the way for us to score immensely as a business by hiring me. I know you don't know me. I know you've never seen me before, but I can assure you that this is the best day for the rest of your life if you bring me on board to help you. Simple. And
I mean,
the man is like, who are you? What do you want?
exactly with that ending, the best day of your life is like,
Exactly. Do you understand? So the reason why I ended on that high note is because it raises so many questions.
yep.
And you want to, or it's like when you're giving sugar to like ants and you're trying to entice them in,
Mhm,
you have to end on a very high note that will raise so many questions,
mhm.
which for an interview too. How you know you've done well in an interview is when it becomes engaging. The moment you
Yeah.
get to that point and you're asking, so do you have any question for me? And they say, no, I don't have any question for you. That's a very big red flag. But the moment the interviewer has a lot of questions for you and you're able to leave them on that high note for your elevator speech, then you already know that you're already sinking them in. So it's kind of like a way to lure them in and then you can get the distance that you want. So that's why I ended on that high note. So the man will probably follow up with, who the hell is this girl and why the hell is she hounding me in an elevator and how can I help you? So then you then need to know that will then be the next conversation into actually having a call to action on fixing maybe a date of meeting, an actual time for you to actually properly pitch your idea to them, or even a second meeting, which could be you don't need a lot of time. 15 minutes is enough time for you to actually sell your idea. And then I think that's about it really. Sorry, my
I
little
think
yeah.
no worries, no worries. I think one important bit I could pick from your elevator pitch was the fact that you brought the names of the brands you work with.
Yeah,
You brought the emotional side of the storytelling,
exactly.
connecting, the organization to your childhood and
Yes.
how you've seen, them grow. And then also another important bit was noting your interaction with, multi-diverse personalities across the number of, like we said, numbers just break this. I mean, you could have said, oh, I've worked with people across the globe. I mean, who has not worked with people across the globe?
Exactly.
It's a digital age. But then when you say I've engaged with 14 persons across like 14 countries, it
Mhm.
just be like, oh, exciting. How many of those countries do we have markets in? Do you
Exactly.
get? So it's I mean, guys, there's just so much you can do in these sessions, So we'll just move on so that we can take questions. I mean, final tips. Can you just run us through final tips and then we'll take questions after now? So, I mean, like you've heard our speak beautifully well this afternoon. Number one, like she said, prepare thoroughly, guys. Prepare thoroughly. Do your research on your interviewer. Just as they are doing their research on you, do your research on them. They're as anxious as you are, they're as nervous as you are. Number two, showcase your knowledge. Know when to bring each part of you out and tell your story. Number three, demonstrate a growth mindset. Like how I said, personal branding, very important. And it just helps you, establish where you are and where you want to go. Another thing I've been able to pick out in developing your growth mindset is the SWOT analysis. Seems trivial, but it's very important to know, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what are the things you can take opportunity of, and what are the things that are currently threats to your success as a personal brand. These are things you need to understand, just going forward. Number four, I cannot sing number four enough. This has been a song on my lips for the past 2 years to people in the job hunting space. Network is just a sacrifice you have to make. You have to go out of your comfort zone, go
Mhm.
for connection, go for connecting events, network, and search for events in your industries. I remember when I was looking for a job, I used to travel to Manchester, I used to travel to Leeds. I went to Birmingham one time for just a networking event, and all these points, these are times that I would have been going for shifts or whatnot. But then it's about the long game at the end of the day,
Mhm.
right? You just want to maximize, networking opportunity. Again, Hawa's echoed number five. Just do it. Like Nike. Just do it. Yeah, just do it because why not, right? Because why not? All right. So what we're going to be doing now is I'm going to be handing over to Eva in the next 5-10 minutes because we have run over time. Eva, can you please just quickly take us through 3 or 4 questions, just so that we can wrap things up and then, we have a WhatsApp platform, and you can join our WhatsApp platform by just DMing us on Instagram, or I'll drop the number in the chats, and then it's a very, very great platform you can take advantage of. We have people from across various fields, across various industries, and you can ask any question we are not able to address here today. So Eva, if you just want to go for it, and then
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm already buzzing and prepping for my next interview.
I know, right?
Yeah, so I'll just start with a few questions. So Teslim asked, how does one tailor the job description to the CV? Can it be tailored to the previous role, or can it be spread over the roles one have worked on?
That's a brilliant question. I think it just depends on your personal journey, whether or not you're applying to the same role at a different company, or whether or not you're applying to a different role at a different organization, or if you're trying to go up the ladder in your career. So it definitely different role that you've never done, but it just depends. I'd like to tell you, Tesla, you cannot have one CV. You probably would have like 2, 3, 4 different variations of your CV, which is needed. It is very necessary, especially for you to get a job, because it just makes it easy. Because it's not every time you sit down and be redrafting a CV. I'd say you'd ask yourself the questions. Again, it's about knowing yourself and what you want out of your own career. So everybody's experience is unique to them. But ultimately, you need different versions of your CVs, which would help you to tailor what the job description is looking for. And I know it's a very annoying process going through a job description for every single job, especially because with the UK here, the job market is a game of numbers rather, where you need the more jobs you apply for, the more you can actually get closer to actually being called for an interview. Because I feel like the most important thing is for you to be called for an interview, because at that point it's left to you to sell yourself. Because there are a lot of CVs and there are a lot of views out there that are applying. Like sometimes on LinkedIn nowadays, I get scared. You see a job posted 20 minutes ago and you see 1,400 people.
Yeah.
You get so it's now, where do you want to start from, and whether or not your CV would actually stand out enough for you to be called for an interview. I feel like sometimes before you even press apply, they've already sent you, unfortunately. So you have to craft your CV in a way that you wouldn't get that, unfortunately, meaning you need to now ask yourself whether or not you want to create different variations of that CV, what job titles you want to tie them to, and whether or not you even see. A trick that I would advise you between me and you is that you might want to have access to ChatGPT. It saves time, especially if you're applying to 1,000 jobs in a day. You don't have that time to draft 1,000 CVs and send to 1,000 jobs. I've seen a lot of the tips online where a lot of people just take the JD, put it, because with ChatGPT now you can actually put like documents in PDFs or Word, just put it there and say, hi chat, I'm trying to apply for this job. Kindly give me the key points that I need for my CV to actually be impactful, or for me to be called back for an interview. Put it there, put your CV. Chat to give you like some tips that you need to do and some improvements. Take them. You could use that, put that in several times to have like different variations to it. But please don't just say because chat has done it, then I've gotten the job. No. Read through what chat is telling you to do, because chat is just an AI. It is not perfect. Nobody can sell your story better than you can, especially not ChatGPT. 3, I'd say go through the JD, because it's always unique and it changes from job to job. Some jobs, they go online to just copy and paste job description, no problem. But for the other ones that people actually take out time to type and actually describe what they intend to see, take that description and put it in your CV as well too. So say, for example, if a job description is saying we need somebody that has Excel experience, the person needs to have maybe 5 years experience in marketing, or the person needs to have XYZ. I'd say that summary at the top of your job, like at the top of your CV, you could start with that. So your summary could be drafted to mean something like, I have 5 years experience in marketing using Excel, XYZ, ZZZ. A lot of the times, what I've noticed now is with the way job application process is becoming quite cumbersome, for a lot of jobs, they actually just use their website. So the HR doesn't even get to see the jobs or doesn't even get to pick it. There's an automated process behind the website that checks for keywords on your CV and determines whether or not you're going to be a good fit. The moment that tech is done checking through your CV, you get the automated, unfortunately, email. So that means keywords is actually important. So you need to know the right keywords. That's what I was saying. It's important for you to check the job description for what they are looking for. Sorry, Caleb, question.
I'm absolutely sorry to cut you short,
Yes.
but I think what I'm just going to say is Hawa is covering a lot of things that, is for the CV session, and this is like an interview bit session. So that's why I just had to
Yeah.
jump in. So
Okay.
if we can just take a couple of more interview based questions, but
Okay.
you already covered the key points. And
Mhm.
if you want to do mentorship, reach out to Hawa or come on the community page and we can always talk about your CVs and all that. But for now, and in based on the people on the group,
Yeah.
please can we just take questions relating to the interviews? Sorry to cut you short. I'm conscious of time and I'm
Okay.
conscious that we have
Yes,
kept
we can
over
take this
time.
offline. We can take this offline.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. So John asked, what do you do when you
Please, I
think
have
you
a
don't
question.
have? I'm just about to read the question, John.
Okay.
Okay. What do you do what do you do when you think you don't have the answer to a question in an interview?
The truth of the matter is that there's this thing you hear, they say fake it till you make it. Even if you don't have the answer, somehow I don't know if you were here on the call, John, when I can't remember the question that I was asked, but I kind of rephrased it back into highlighting my strengths and how I fit into the job. So even if they ask you a question that you don't exactly know the answer to, you could try to talk your way around it. And then at the end of the day, exemplify yourself while you're trying to answer their question. So say if somebody should ask, how do you use Excel? And in your life, you don't even know how to start drafting Excel. And they say, how do you use Excel for XYZ cells? And you're like, oh, while I don't have enough experience in Excel, I am actually very proficient in using things like Google Sheets, because Google Sheets is kind of like, I don't know if you know, but it's a different version of Excel. And you could actually talk and say, oh, and I'm actually very good at analytics and actually bringing numbers together and getting you where you need to get to, which most of the times during my career has been very resourceful in actually getting me to where I need to get to. Now, did you now see what I just did? I just admitted that I don't know, because it's okay to admit that you don't know, but I didn't just say I don't know and I kept quiet. I used that to also lean in on my strengths and trying to make them see that there are different ways to achieve what Excel would achieve using my own experience that I bring on board. Like what Caleb said before about his boss. So it's about the same thing too. So kind of using that at the end of the day to sell yourself, even if you don't have the answers to what they're asking at that point in time.
Okay, thank you so much. The next question is, what would you say are your greatest weaknesses?
Me personally, or is that a job question?
That has to be a question for the interviewer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well, are you sure? Who asked the question? Does the person want to
Okay,
clarify?
Reggie asked that question. What would you say are your greatest weaknesses? I believe it's someone in an
I think
interview,
he
and
sent the
yeah.
question when we were talking about difficult questions.
oh,
So yeah, so probably it's how do we approach answering
that type of question.
that type of question? Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a good question. So I'd say how to approach that type of question, right? You don't talk about things that are personal and cannot be changed. So you don't want to come and say, oh, my greatest weakness is that I'm always late. That one, there's no solution. There's nothing around that.
Sorry, you're done.
So, but you can come from a place about maybe a previous thing that has happened before and how you've been able to turn it around and improve on the job, or through your experience, you've been able to improve that. So, say, for example, you could say, oh, one of my greatest weaknesses that I had noticed and my attention had been called upon on a previous job was actually walking around the clock and not knowing how to shut down around 5 p.m. But I've been taking up courses to actually help me learn on how to balance my work-life balance even better. And I've improved and You see, so I still brought them back to exemplifying yourself. Even if they should say your weakness, still turn it around and make it somehow to stand like your strength. So admitting that, yes, this is this, but please don't ever talk about a weakness that cannot be changed. Or you can something like, say if you are trying to apply for an accounting job and they're asking you what's your weakness, you say, my greatest weakness is that I don't like numbers. Doesn't Do you understand? So you can't do that because it just shows you can't be taught, you cannot be improved, you can't change, and you will be a liability to the organization. You don't want that.
Okay, thank you so much. There's another question from Halima. It says, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Me again, personally,
No, not you, actually. I think
okay.
yeah, it's an interview scenario where
Okay.
questions are coming on. Yeah.
Okay, so you cannot just tell the interviewer that I intend to leave your job in 2 years' time. So I don't. so so that type of thing, I'd say you should come from the angle of saying, oh, well, that's a good question. One of the reasons that I actually decided to apply for your job is because part of my career progression is for me to fit into, you can talk about the job role, maybe for me to actually become a digital marketer based on you're talking about 4 years experience. So you can see the way you're tying it past, future, present. Based on my 4 years experience in terms of my career progression, I intend that in the next 10 years, I should be a leader within the industry and actually use my experience to build, if you're a woman, you could say, to actually use that to encourage and build more diversity in my industry. So you can see how you've talked about it being industry, not just saying in the next 2 years, I intend to leave you people. Once I get this job and I get promoted, I'm resigning after 2 years. No. So you come from that point of a global, so it's having a global mindset, but applying it locally to where you are. So you could use that to tell your story. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll just take one more. I don't know if it's a question or a statement. It's from Chinyere. She said, the only thing I'm scared of during interviews is the use of system. Can you please, Chinyere, can you please explain that? Is that a question or a statement?
And what type of system? Is it laptops?
Yeah.
Is it that she prefer in-person interviews or what?
I don't know. That's why I said I don't know if it's a question. It seems like Chinyere is no longer on the call. No, she's still on the call. I can see her. Chinyere, can you please explain?
Oh,
She said it's a question.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't know I was muted. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes, we can
we
hear
can hear
you.
you.
Thank you so much. The great speakers that we have on this platform, like I haven't seen something like this before. I go for seminars and I hear people speak, but today I just feel like you guys have enlightened me more and boost my confidence when it comes to going for these jobs and looking out for this type of jobs. So I'm someone that loves to explore. I'm someone that loves to challenge myself. But coming to the UK, I find it a bit I won't say it's a challenging thing, but I feel so like I don't have this confidence to go for the jobs that suits me. When I see these jobs, I feel like, oh, maybe they will ask me to use Excel because I don't have any knowledge about Excel or Microsoft. So these are my challenges. I have seen a lot of jobs that suits me and I can do it because of my past experience. But when it gets to the system part of it, I get so frightened. I get so like, no,
Right.
someone should do it. I can just be the assistant. But I can be the main person doing it. But because of that thing. So it has always been like a major setback for me. I don't know if there's any way I can work on it or improve, or maybe anyone I can learn from them, something like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's very valid to feel that way, and I don't think you're alone. I personally am not a friend of Excel, but it's a learning process, and I think it's very important for you to remember that self-improvement is actually a learning process as well too. If you feel that your job role, specifically in your industry, will require majorly the use of Excel, I'd advise that you should probably see how you can make out time. I know the UK is busy and there's barely time for anything, but you could just make out time, even if it's 10 minutes per day, to actually just go on YouTube and check for tutorials on how to use Excel. You don't have to be an expert in it and know how to use all the codes and everything, but it's just knowing how to use the basic things. If you think they would ask you during an interview, it's just knowing the basic things around the Excel so that you can use that to your strength. When I just did my NYSC, there was a job I didn't get because of Excel, because we literally got there and they gave us a system to use Excel. And at that point, I knew I was screwed. So, but what I did afterwards was going to go and learn and to improve and to get better. So that's what I'm saying, that you just try and find time, Chinri. I know there's not a lot of time, but just try and learn Excel if you think it's absolutely important for you to find it. And don't doubt yourself. You might have some basic or elementary skills around it. That might be sufficient. For God's sake, it might not even be asked during the interview. So just apply for it and just see how you can challenge yourself so you can self-improve.
Thank
Thank you.
you so much for that amazing answer. I will just continue from there. I saw something that Caleb dropped on the chat box. He talked about a gap analysis. So personally, I think the first time I heard about a gap analysis is when I was working with a business analyst. So I think you can also do a gap analysis on yourself, because the greatest thing we struggle with is telling ourselves the truth. Personally, I used to be shit at presentations, very bad. But you need to carry out that skill mapping of yourself to tell yourself, okay, I'm trying to get this role. This role requires 10 skills. I've looked at the 10 skills. What am I good at? Am I good at two, or I need to improve on eight? List those skills down. I always say this, writing things down makes it real. It's not about having it in your head and just visualizing it. Write it down. What do I need to do? Do I need to go on YouTube? Do I need to get courses on Udemy? You need to prepare a learning structure for yourself. It's not by just saying, I know there's this famous picture online where a kid has beaten into like 10 different apples, and someone just said that's how my Udemy courses are. 1 hour here, 1 hour there. Create a learning structure and try so hard to go through it. I know it's not easy. Personally, I struggle with it, but it's better to prepare that, have an idea of what you need to do, get those courses down. YouTube is so amazing. I remember when we're in uni, I always said the University of YouTube will help you. YouTube is so amazing. I think the only thing that's not on YouTube is how to kill someone. Maybe it's even there. I don't know.
Actually, there is
So YouTube
actually
is
there.
so amazing. But so for the sake of time, we'd like to appreciate everyone for taking out their time out of the busy weekend to come on the call. You can reach us through our official email that's on the screen at academiainc.uk.com. We are also on Instagram, and we've got our official website. Reach out to us for your mentorship sessions, your CV reviews, your interview preparations, and also settling into the job, because it's a journey from your CV to your interview. Now I've gotten the job. How do I settle in? How do I pass my first 3 or 6 months probation? That is also going to be the topic of our next session. We'll be talking about congratulations, you've got the job. How do I settle in? How do I go through all the hurdles and all the craziness of the corporate world to go through my probation? So would like to officially say thank you to everybody. Thank you to Hauwa for taking the time. I know I've come up with your portfolio. I'm going through your portfolio, your rich resume, your amazing website. It's really
Too
good. I think,
amazing. It
yeah,
is so
personally, I
amazing.
think I need to come up with my own personal portfolio. I need to
I
sell
know,
myself.
right?
Yeah, when you
Yeah.
were speaking earlier, I just searched my name online, and the only thing that came up was my Instagram account. I was like, okay, this is not too good. Instagram, how many pictures do I even post? So I need an online presence. It's not, I know Howard talks about awards and all of that. It's great, it's amazing, but we have achieved a lot. Like I said in our previous session, you have done a lot, but you actually do not know that you've done a lot. So we have to settle down, do some deep research, think about all the things we have achieved, even if it's that schooling lucky that you help them to do something. You've got some pictures, talk about it.
Yeah.
That's a proper skill. You've been able to achieve something, sell yourself, because the market is crazy, the competition is a lot, and we just need to keep working hard to stand out and build ourselves forward. So thank you again to everyone. Thank you to our amazing host Caleb. Thank you to Howard for taking the time out today. We wish everyone all the best. Keep those applications going. Don't give up. Hang in there. All you need is
Definitely.
just 1 yes. 1 yes, and everything falls in place. So keep it going, and we say thank you. Have a lovely weekend,
So before
everyone.
we go, don't forget, if you want to reach out to Hawa for your mentorship session, you can check her portfolio. It's hawayakubu.com, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That is correct. And she's
Yes, and
also
then she's
on
ADP.
ADP. I'll just be
So
dropping the link to ADP right now
yeah, so
on how to get a mentor. So I'll drop that link.
maximize it, because very soon I'm going to turn to Hawa's manager. And
Yeah. So I can't stress on how a mentor is very important. Please go
Yeah.
on ADP. It's free, actually. Go on ADP,
Mm-hmm.
get a mentor, speak to someone. I have a mentor I speak to, in a month or two. We always talk, we catch up. It's very important. There are lots of amazing mentors out there. Reach out to people and keep networking. Like Howard said, network every single day. I know I'll make some new friends after this call. So thank
Definitely.
you, everyone. Thank you for your time once
Thanks everyone
again.
for coming. Thanks
Thank
a lot,
you.
Hawa, for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you too for having me.
All
Bye.
right.
Bye.